Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group. 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com. That's B-E-A-T, IRS. Serving Alaskans, Americans since 1978 with 2 generations of tax defense attorneys. We're honored to have with us Colonel Lawrence Sellen. He served 29 years in the U.S. Army Reserves. He completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. He also holds a Ph.D. in physiology, recently retired from an international business career in information technology, currently the contributing editor for the website Family Security Matters, and he's also the author of the book Restoring the Republic, Arguments for a Second American Revolution. Colonel Sellen, welcome to the Joe Miller Show.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
So the title of the book that you published, Restoring the Republic, Arguments for a Second American Revolution, intriguing. Tell us a little bit about the book, what you hope to accomplish by it, and where people can get it.
Right. Well, really the main theme of the book revolves around 2 points, and these points are also relevant to the 2016 election. The first one is that I believe the political media establishment is hopelessly corrupt. And secondly, that we have elections, but we no longer have representative government. And what I mean by this is we're currently in a conflict between those who want to adhere to the Constitution and the rule of law and party leaders and a biased media who wish to continue the practices of political expediency and crony capitalism. What I hope to accomplish by this book is really to alert people and to get them involved politically. Political insurgency, not violent, but a political insurgency, a bottom-up revolution where we can really change the direction of the country in terms of the corruption. Now, this book you can get in the Kindle version from Amazon.
So when you say that elections no longer result in representative government, are you suggesting vote fraud? Are you suggesting that leaders that are elected simply ignore the will of the people? What do you mean by that?
Well, primarily the second one, that they come and they make speeches and present policies to their constituents, and when they get to Washington, D.C., and I'm talking about a federal level in particular, when they get to Washington, D.C., they really follow whatever party line that they have, either Democrat or Republicans. And these tend to be dictated by, powerful and wealthy people, not their constituents. But I also should add that I do believe there's a certain level of voter fraud that is going on, which needs to be corrected. And unlike a lot of people who say, well, there's not massive fraud in the electoral process, you really don't need it because you can swing a key state by just altering the votes in a few precincts in the large cities, for example.
In my race against Lisa Murkowski back in 2010, the marginal loss was about 3,000 votes. And part of the approach that was taken, at least by the establishment, was exactly what you said. Well, it's not that many votes that were actually tampered with, although in our case, we had dozens of affidavits reflecting that there may have been as many as 10,000 votes tampered with. And that's the point. It's the marginal impact of the fraud that swings elections, and that can have devastating consequences to representative democracy. I've made the comment before, and I don't mean to go too far off askance on this, that what happened in Iraq several years ago, in fact, I guess they still do, they dye fingers. And you and some of these third world, second world countries actually have a greater degree of reliability of the vote than we even have here. But the point, getting back to the point that you make, that we are electing people to do one thing, and in fact they represent in the course of the elections that they're going to do something. They go to D.C., they do precisely the opposite. It is exceptionally frustrating. Various theories as to what happens. You suggested maybe they get corrupted when they get there because of the money, et cetera. I think that a number of these folks that run, especially the people that come out of the establishment, already know as they're running that they intend to follow the dictates of the ruling class as opposed to the people. Do you think it's more of the former than the latter, that people get corrupted after they get there instead of actually by intent at the time they run, that they're going to basically leverage or not do what they're elected to do?
No, I think it's that they've already decided. A lot of these candidates are pre-selected, so to speak. Of course, the Democrats tend to follow the party line, no matter what. And what the Republicans do is really pre-select people. Is that they really limit the electoral process by limiting our choices, and you can see that's what's happening now in the national campaign with Donald Trump. They don't want him to be the candidate, so they're doing all kinds of shenanigans to get him out of the race and support their sort of pre-selected candidate. So I think it's mostly that. Joe.
Well, so this duopoly, that's what I and others have called it, where you basically have people elected from both parties doing the same thing, growing the federal government, reducing freedom, increasing dependency, not really doing anything about some of the issues that are really important to conservatives. I mentioned even on the life issue, even though the Republican Party is the party of life, abortion is still legal today. Why? Because really it's just from the decision makers' perspective, it's a fringe issue. It's one just simply to gain the vote as opposed to actual, practical action. They'll never actually sacrifice any real political power in order to accomplish the aim of the people with respect to that issue. But I would assume that this issue of both parties ignoring the will of the people is in part what's motivated this article that you put up at FamilySecurityMatters.org entitled Choosing National Suicide. Tell us a little bit about this article, what you mean by that, what the factors are that are driving us into destruction.
Well, yeah, I started out by saying earlier that we have these two particular problems of hopeless corruption and really non-representative government, and these are really the causes of their problems. But one of the things I'm trying to say there is that we can't have any solutions. They talk about illegal immigration, the economy, et cetera, but we really can't have any solutions because we have those two issues. As we just say, we vote for certain things, and then when they get to Washington, they don't do that. They do something else, which is where the corruption in the political media establishment resides, and that type of thing where we can't get solutions also leads to the situation where we have Barack Hussein Obama in the White House. If we didn't have those two factors that are affecting our electoral process, I don't think Obama would be president, would be in the Oval Office. And now we're in a situation where he's, I think, essentially succeeding in this fundamental transformation, which is, in my mind, dismantling the United States as a capitalist republic based on Judeo-Christian democratic principles.
Obama wouldn't be in the White House as well if the media had done its job. The media is a major part of this overarching plan to continue to expand power at the top. Any rudimentary background review of Obama and publication regarding what he was, what he did, where he grew up, his influences, would have convinced the average American to have voted against this president. The media has a tremendous impact on this process, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why when I talk about this, I say the corruption in the political media establishment, because as you just mentioned, the media are intimately involved in this and largely, as you correctly state, electing Obama in 2008 and 2012. First, by not fully vetting him, because there's so many things. We really don't know who he is. We don't know anything about him. And then secondly, in 2012, by not critically analyzing his performance as president. So absolutely, it's an integral part of the problem that we have.
Yeah, there are a number of reasons, I think, why the Republican Party didn't take him on. The establishment's concerned. Assuming that there is actually competition between the parties, with it, look, if we attack him as he should be, they'll scream racist. We'll lose the ability to bring minorities into the party. The reality is they're trying to accomplish the same thing. That's the growth of the government. It's increased control of the people. That's what the folk at the top want, and they'll stop with all their might anybody that tries to counter that. talking with Colonel Sellen, an article entitled Choosing National Suicide, also a book about a need for a second American revolution, political, not violent. We're going to talk more about this, also the lineup for the presidency on the Republican side after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show. KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We're on the air with Colonel Lawrence Sellen. He served 29 years, almost 3 decades in the U.S. Army Reserve, completed tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, holds a Ph.D. in physiology, written a number of interesting things, including a book entitled Restoring the Republic, Arguments for a Second American Revolution. You can get that on Kindle at Amazon.com. And he also recently wrote an article that prompted our interest, Choosing National Suicide, published on a website that he's the editor of, FamilySecurityMatters.org. Colonel Sellen, thank you for staying with us, being willing to talk a little bit more about your concerns about the country.
Thank you, Joe.
So, Colonel Sellen, we were talking about during the break, where do we go from here? We've got two parties basically doing the same thing, acting without regard to what the people want. You know, on both sides of the aisle, too, I might add. It's not just the Republican Party acting in a way, you know, expanding government. It's even on the Democratic side. I mean, you saw that during the Democratic National Convention a few years ago, where there was an effort of the delegates to strip God out of the plank. And, of course, the leadership trumped it, despite what the delegates wanted. The left is actually more extreme in the Democratic Party than what the representative leadership reflects. But in any event, the polling data on both sides of the aisle reflect that the people of this country are unsatisfied with their respective parties because they don't reflect their interests. They don't reflect what they actually want. And it's getting worse. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You look at the battle over the speaker, what John Boehner has done as speaker now, Paul Ryan, you know, the fact that most people didn't want Paul Ryan in that position, and yet he got there. The fact that they continue to not stand up against President Obama, despite the fact that they hold a majority in the House, Republicans that is, even, you know, holding both houses of Congress for that matter, and not really putting up any meaningful opposition to the president. You mentioned earlier that you believe that we ought to explore kind of the unconventional, you know, potentially go outside of the two parties. Tell me how practically that works out. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are different ways of doing that. I think the first way we're seeing actually in real time now is the Donald Trump candidacy, and I see him more as a symbol than a candidate. He's a symbol where the people who, as you describe, are dissatisfied with the lack of representative government can rally around. And perhaps a lot of people can feel that Trump is not the ideal candidate in many respects because of his checkered background politically, but he could create a wave where perhaps another candidate at some point in time can come in behind him. So that's one way is nationally, and someone like him or someone like him could actually be a person to rally around for a third party, for example. Otherwise, you have to go through the two-party system as it is. And on the Republican side, for example, you can start working at the precinct level. There are actually a lot of precinct positions that go unfilled in the Republican Party, where conservatives can come in and begin after a while to dominate the Republican Party locally. So from that perspective, I tend to focus more on a bottom-up political insurgency rather than the national Trump-like level. And this involves devolving power back to the states, back to the local communities, as the 10th Amendment describes.
So, one of the things that we have seen the establishment do, especially up here in Alaska, is even though, for example, we have elected a party chair from the people that was a non-establishment guy, the establishment then used the power on the Central Committee to, from my perspective and many others' perspective, unlawfully remove him from office. And you know, of course, what that does, it depresses activism. In the same way that vote fraud and a perspective that the media unfairly treats certain candidates, that also creates a degree of passivity. We've even seen it in Alaska in some regions, significant drop-off in activism because there's a view that, look, it doesn't matter how I vote, it doesn't matter what I do at the party local level, they will still control the process because of their unlawful actions. And, of course, in many cases, the courts are backing them up. I think that that is part of the agenda of the establishment, is to cause people to stay home, to effectively make them passive, non-participatory, and that's the way that they can continue to dominate despite the fact that the people don't support what they're doing. What say you?
Well, I think what you described is true, and it's happening in most states. Not just Alaska. But this gets back to a point you made earlier about dependency, and on the Democrat side, they create dependency, and this is what the political parties do. They want to create this dependency. On the Democrat side, they create dependencies by, doing tribal politics, creating dependency on the federal government, and things like that. On the Republican side, they create dependency by limiting choice. Exactly the way you describe is that, if someone new comes along, whether it's a Tea Party or a new candidate or even Donald Trump, they try to remove them. So, this is how they can control, the process of the people who are in office, and this is why you end up with non-representative government.
So what is the way out? I mean, you mentioned again the possibility of a third party run by Trump, but what is it that the people can do? Do you believe, and I'll just ask this as a question, then you can go beyond the parameters of this, but do you think that conservative voters should start taking an uncompromising view toward choice? In other words, if they aren't represented by either candidate at general election, should they vote for a third-party candidate to punish the Republican that believes that they can count on their vote despite the fact that that Republican intends to vote completely contrary to their interest?
Well, the short answer, Joe, is yes. The turning point for me was in the 2014 election, and a lot of you and most people will recall that the Republican Party ran very, very strongly on blocking Obama's executive amnesty, which is, in my mind, clearly unconstitutional. And they ran almost their entire campaign on that nationally in 2014. But as soon as they got into office, directly, in fact, weeks after the election, not even in the new term, they fully funded Obama's executive amnesty. So this is one example, but you can probably, list 100 other examples where they did exactly the same thing: tell the voters one thing and then do another thing. So why do it when you end up with a two-party system that is essentially a uniparty, who are actually doing the same things, political expediency and crony capitalism? Why vote for the Republicans?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And many other examples similar to that. I think that people are getting smarter about this. I mean, they look at the Republican Party attacking their own. I mean, attacked me as a nominee in 2010, attacked Sharon Angle, attacked Ken Buck. I mean, these things happen when you've got a party that's all about power, not about freedom, and it's something that we need to undercut, hopefully from the inside. I mean, that's the hope. But anyway, Colonel Sellen, appreciate having you on the Joe Miller Show. Appreciate your writing. We'll put up your podcast, your article tonight at joemiller.us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.